And back to our top story tonight, Bangladeshi Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina ends her 15-year rule and flees the country after weeks of deadly protests. The military has said it will form an interim government to fill the political void, pledging to quell the violence. From inside, let's bring in Mubashar Hasan. He is a postdoctoral researcher at the University of Oslo, and he joins us from Sydney. Dr. Hasan, earlier we spoke to our India correspondent, and he told us the reaction from students to that message from the army chief was, quote, somewhat positive. What the students have said with very clear positions: military rule is not a solution. This needs to be the country needs to be handed over to the revolutionary students and citizens. For positivity, one assumes there must be a compromise between what the military is willing to offer and what the students are willing to accept. Where might that compromise lie?
Thank you for inviting me. I think the compromise lies into prospective negotiation between the military and the student leaders and the students who led this, I would say, uprising against Prime Minister. And it is quite obvious that the students would not appreciate a military rule, because one of the key reasons Bangladesh is here today is Sheikh Hasina established a creeping authoritarian rule in the country. And so obviously students are skeptic about a military-led interim government, because that is also not likely to be a government that would shy away from authoritarian style of ruling. But at the same time, negotiation would be key. And I was scrolling through the local media news websites, and it seems to me that there will be a negotiation between the student leaders and military chief.
All right.
So negotiations.
Yes, negotiations all very well, but we look at, as you say, a creeping authoritarian rule. This is 15 years. This is her second time in office, Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina. And in that time, the opposition has had no life. It has been well and truly crushed. What can the students offer in terms of alternative rulers if they will not accept military rule?
So, first of all, she's been ruling Bangladesh this time since 2009. And since 2009, there were 3 or 4 elections under her regime. All were rigged and, 3 elections, and all were rigged and boycotted and problematic. So that's number one. Number two is there could be another solution and Bangladesh has had that example where a group of civilian government with support from military worked as an interim government and organized an election which is free and fair, where people could actually elect their representative. So that could be an option where we would see a combination of military and civilians or forming an interim government and then offering a free and fair election.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Hasan, are you referring back to 2007? Again, there was unrest. Again, the military stepped in, and it offered a caretaker government, which in 2009 went to elections, which, of course, former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina won. Would that provide some kind of textbook framework for what could happen? What should we be expecting in the days and the weeks ahead for this to happen?
I think it is really important at the moment for all the parties that is involved to come into some sort of agreement to move forward, whether it would be a 2007 model caretaker government or whether they will call it under different name. But it is very important to come to an agreement sooner rather than later, Because if you see the news that is coming out from Bangladesh, yes, there are hundreds and thousands of people around the street celebrating, but also there are news of violence being news of violence coming out, and that violence is towards the former ruling party, and we need to have some sort of reconciliation process. And as long as there is an agreement with the parties that are involved now, there is the students, there is the civil society, and there is the military. As long as they can come to some sort of agreement to form an interim government, I think law and order would be established sooner rather than later. And it is the number one priority now.
Well, thanks so much for joining us, Dr. Mubashar Hasan, postdoc research from the University of Oslo, and joining us from Sydney.